I came home with the smell of antiseptic still clinging to my jacket. Bandages wrapped around my ribs like a cage, holding everything in pain, breath, whatever was left of my pride. The driveway was full. I could hear voices from inside, laughter, plates clinking. For a second, I thought they might have been waiting for me, but the door opened and nothing changed. Dorian stood by the mirror, fixing his collar, checking his teeth, not even a glance in my direction. "You're back," he said flatly, without turning. "Took long enough." I didn't respond. I was too focused on the weight of my feet. Each step up the short hallway felt like dragging concrete blocks. Mom waved at me from the kitchen. "How are you feeling, sweetie?" Before I could answer, Aunt Rachel cut in. "Dorian, don't forget the wine. You know how Lacey gets without it." They all laughed. I cleared my throat. "I'm still on medication. I can't really—" "You look fine," Dorian interrupted. "If you can walk, you can talk." He grinned like he'd said something clever. I looked around the room, waiting for someone to speak up, to say, "That's enough." No one did. Dad was busy arguing with the GPS on his phone, trying to find a restaurant. My cousin was showing off a new pair of shoes to Grandma. Everyone had a task, a distraction. Except me. I stood there in the center of the room like a framed photograph no one bothered to hang. Dorian grabbed his coat. "We'll be late," he said to Lacey, his girlfriend. Then, to me, over his shoulder, "You're walking fine. I'll be back late." The door slammed before I could respond. I stared at it for a long minute. Then I turned to the fridge, slowly, each movement sending dull shocks through my side. I opened the freezer, found some frozen lasagna, and dropped it on the counter. My hands were shaking as I cut open the plastic. Halfway to the microwave, I lost my balance and caught myself on the counter. A burning streak shot up my ribs. No one came. No one asked. I made it through dinner in silence, one eye on the clock, the other on the front door. Somewhere between chewing and forcing down cold pasta, my mind drifted, back to the night of the accident. Dorian had my car. He didn't ask. He never asked. I'd called him that night, 5 times, straight to voicemail. I thought maybe he'd show up at the hospital. He didn't. He came the next day, with Lacey in tow, holding a coffee like it was a peace offering. No apology, just, "That's rough, sis." I never forgot that. Mom passed by me tonight, looked like she wanted to say something, then kept going. She busied herself with dishes that didn't need washing. "Don't start," I heard Aunt Rachel whisper in the next room. "She's always been too emotional." That did it. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there and let the rage sink in, slow and hot. The knock on the door came just as I stood to throw away my plate. 2 officers. "Evening," one said, tipping his hat slightly. "We're looking for Dorian Carter." Mom appeared behind me. "He's not here. What's this about?" "Ma'am, do you know if he was driving a black sedan 3 weeks ago? License plate ends in 73Z? "That's my car," I said, stepping forward. The second officer looked at his tablet. Ticket came up on an automatic scan, same night as the reported collision. "What ticket?" I asked. The first cop glanced at me, then at my mother. "Parked illegally outside the Blue Heron. Around 10 p.m. No insurance was listed on the registration." "No insurance?" I echoed. I remembered that night clearly now. I'd found the car parked askew, door ajar. I thought I'd lost control. I thought it was me. But it wasn't. Dorian had taken it, without telling me. He left it there, went out to dinner, and when I found it, I blamed myself. My mouth went dry. "We'll need to speak to him," the officer said, handing over a citation. "Have him call us as soon as he returns." I nodded, my hand frozen around the paper. Everyone was staring, but no one said a word, and for the first time I said it out loud, soft, like a confession. It wasn't an accident. He wasn't supposed to be driving at all. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I laid there staring at the ceiling, the hush of the house pressing in on me like a blanket I couldn't kick off. The knock from the officers still echoed through my bones, replaying over and over. Dorian had taken my car. That fact kept tightening around my chest, and no one said anything. By the time the sun dragged itself through the blinds, I was already in the kitchen, hands shaking around a coffee mug I didn't drink from. The house was too still, like everyone had made an unspoken agreement to pretend nothing happened. Mom came in quietly, barefoot, robe wrapped tight. She set out plates and silverware with robotic precision. She didn't meet my eyes once. I opened my mouth, closed it, tried again. About last night. She cut me off with a soft, tired smile. Do you want eggs or toast? The front door creaked. Dorian walked in like he owned the place. Sunglasses still on, hair unbothered, whistling some tune he probably picked up from the car ride back from Rachel's. He slid into the chair across from me. Morning? I waited. Nothing. You got something you want to say? I asked. He leaned back. What? About the cops? They're always looking for someone to blame. That smirk, that casual shrug, like the truth didn't weigh a single ounce on his shoulders. I set my cup down slowly. Did you take my car that night? He pulled off his glasses, squinting at me like I was wasting his time. It's not like you were gonna use it. You were laid up anyway. Then he stood and walked away like that was closure. I didn't move. Couldn't. Not until I heard the front door shut behind him. Dad came down minutes later, rubbing his temples like he'd been up late watching football. I tried to catch his eye. Dad! Let it go, he muttered, cutting open a banana. Boys will be boys. That sentence, so simple, so dismissive. Like it covered every sin from stealing a toy to stealing a damn car. Mom finally spoke as she rinsed a plate. Sweetheart, it's not worth tearing the family apart over something like this. I laughed once. Sharp, bitter. It already is torn. You just don't want to see it. They didn't reply. Back in my room, I locked the door and sank to the floor. Pulled out the old shoebox of pictures from under my bed. Smiling faces. Christmases. Dorian in the center of everyone. Me? I was always on the edge or holding the camera. As I shuffled through the stack, a discharge paper slipped out from my jacket pocket. I stared at it. The date. The hospital's name. My name. No one had asked how I was healing. Not once. I remembered something else. 4 years ago. My birthday dinner. I waited all evening for Dorian. He never showed. But the next morning, everyone praised him for bringing Rachel flowers. No one noticed I hadn't even blown out candles. Favoritism doesn't always come with grand gestures. Sometimes it's just silence in the moments when you most need to be heard. I pulled up Rachel's Instagram, half hoping she'd posted something tone-deaf. And there it was, photos from last night, her smiling, wine in hand, Dorian's arm around her. Caption, best dinner ever at the Grove. While I was home, aching, and trying to remember how to breathe, I texted Dorian. I need to talk. He left it on red. No reply. I stared at my screen for so long I didn't notice the time pass. Outside, birds chirped like nothing had changed. But everything had. When people disappear from your life emotionally long enough, you start inventing reasons for their absence, just so it doesn't cut so deep. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe it's just a phase. But now I knew better. They weren't absent by accident. They just didn't choose me. The paper from the hospital sat in my hand like proof. Not just of my injury, but of everything I'd let slide. I wasn't sure what I wanted more, an apology or revenge. The morning light crept in like it was guilty, brushing against my face through the slits in the blinds. It had been 2 days since the police knocked on our door, and not a single person in this house had brought it up again. Not one. I stood in the living room with a folded piece of paper in my hand, my own list of questions, thoughts, a plan to force a conversation. I'd written it down because I knew the moment I opened my mouth, they'd find a way to derail it. I called out softly, "Can we talk? All of us?" Dorian didn't even stop walking through the hallway. "I'm slammed today," he said, flipping his keys. "Gotta run. Later." The door closed behind him before I could answer. Dad sat in his usual spot by the window, eyes buried in a newspaper I'm not even sure he read anymore. "Dad?" He lifted the paper an inch higher. Mom was folding laundry in the corner. Her hands paused, but she didn't look at me. "This family has been through enough," she said. Then she walked out, leaving a warm shirt still in her hands and me standing there like a fool, holding words that had nowhere to go. I stood in the center of that room, where family photos used to hang before the repainting, and I realized something so sharp it made me physically still. Silence wasn't their peace offering. It was their control, their punishment, and I'd been swallowing it for years. Later that afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook, flipping through grocery coupons I didn't care about just to look busy. Dorian passed by, talking on the phone with Rachel, voice raised in fake charm. "She's fine, babe. She's being dramatic again, like always." My name wasn't said, but it was me. I knew it. They spoke around me now. Never to me. I wasn't part of their narrative. I was the inconvenience in the background. When Rachel arrived, the whole house shifted. Mom smiled wide, like she'd missed her more than she missed me when I was in the hospital. Rachel hugged her like nothing had happened. No car, no injury, no police, no lies, just brunch plans and boutique talk. I sat quietly on the stairs, listening. "She's not dying," Rachel whispered to Mom, loud enough that I could hear. "It's not like she almost died. She walked away fine. She's milking it." I felt myself physically shrink, like I could fold into the wood beneath me. Was I? Was I overreacting? I went to my room, shut the door, and opened my messages. Still no response from Dorian. I put the phone down and just stared at the wall, letting that sentence replay. She walked away fine. I hadn't walked away fine. I limped out of that hospital with stitches and swelling and a cervical collar. But what cut deeper than the bruises was knowing they decided what my pain was worth without ever asking me. I sat at my desk, pulled out a notebook, and started listing things, not feelings, facts, dates, texts, photos. I pulled up my phone, scrolled through messages, screenshotted conversations, voice memos from that night, the look on the officers' faces when they asked about my insurance, my reaction when I heard the car was used without permission. Because if no one else would remember what really happened, I would. That's when I heard the voice of my old professor, Mr. Langston, a hard man with soft eyes who once said to me after a failed group project, "When someone tells you who they are, believe them the first time." I had believed this family was flawed but well-meaning, misguided but still trying. But now I believed them. Because they had shown me, again and again, exactly what I meant to them. I stopped asking for answers. I stopped hoping for justice at the dinner table or decency in a passing hallway. If I wanted protection, I had to build it myself. I looked through my contact list until I found the name, Connie Marks, a friend from college turned paralegal in Atlanta. I didn't want to sue anyone, yet, but I wanted to know my rights. What was legal? What wasn't? What counted as negligence? I started typing a message to her, then paused. I wasn't sure if I was more afraid of what I'd learn or of confirming that my own blood had crossed a line they could never come back from. But I kept typing. If they wanted me to stay quiet, they should have treated me like I mattered. 3 days after the last blowout, Dorian texted me out of nowhere. "Dinner Friday. Me, you, Rachel. My treat. Clean slate?" It didn't read like an apology. It read like PR, public relations for the family image. But I accepted, not because I believed him. I accepted because I wanted to see what he looked like when he had to pretend he was innocent. Up close. When we pulled up to the restaurant, it hit me immediately. This wasn't neutral ground. This was Rachel's playground. Fancy valet, soft lighting, waiters in black vests. One of them smiled and said, "Welcome back, Mr. Dorian," and reached for the door like they knew him by heart. I hadn't even unbuckled yet. Inside, the hostess led us to a booth tucked near the windows with a view of the skyline like a backdrop for a movie I wasn't invited to. The menus were oversized, and the wine list had more options than my last hospital bill had line items. Rachel leaned in to kiss Dorian on the cheek, giggling like the last few days didn't matter. I didn't come to eat. I came to watch. Rachel took the lead, running through a monologue that sounded like a lifestyle influencer on autoplay. So the firm is opening a second branch in Charleston. Milo's been having stomach issues again, poor thing. Oh, and we're finally doing Capri in June, right, babe? Dorian nodded, glass in hand, offering me a passing glance every 10 minutes like I was a guest who hadn't RSVP'd. When I chimed in once about a possible consulting offer I'd been quietly considering, Rachel tilted her head. Oh, that's neat. Neat. They didn't want a conversation. They wanted an audience. At one point, Rachel leaned over and said, I mean, you're good now, right? Like, all recovered? No harm done. She smiled with her teeth, the kind that says, I'm not really asking. I looked at her. I didn't nod. I didn't blink. I didn't say a word. And in that moment of silence, I watched her start to fidget. It's funny how loud silence can be when someone's used to getting away with things. I slowly reached into my bag and pulled out a simple manila folder. Nothing dramatic, just quiet and deliberate. I laid it flat on the table between the three of us, opened it, and slid it across. Inside were printouts, text logs, timestamps, a scanned copy of the police report, photos of my car's bumper, the ticket issued under Dorian's name, and my hospital release form, still creased from my jacket pocket. Dorian looked at it like it burned. Rachel squinted, then chuckled nervously. What is this? Some kind of intervention? I looked at Dorian. Still think dinner was the right priority that night? He opened his mouth, then closed it. His jaw clenched, the same expression he used to get when he knew he'd been caught, even as a kid. Rachel tried again, her voice an octave higher. Okay, this is intense. I think maybe you're overthinking this a bit. I stood up. No dessert for me, I said calmly. You've had your meal, now digest that. I didn't slam anything. I didn't storm out. I simply walked away, past the hostess, past the valet, past the families laughing over wine and filet mignon, because that night wasn't about the food. That night, the statement was mine. What came next wasn't dessert. It was accountability. The next morning smelled like nothing had happened. Eggs, bacon, coffee, the familiar scent of denial dressed up in cinnamon and toast. My mother moved through the kitchen like she was auditioning for a role in a commercial. Dorian sat at the counter with his usual smug smile, sipping orange juice and cracking jokes as if he hadn't been publicly cornered the night before. My father held the newspaper so close to his face, I wondered if he was even reading it or just using it as a shield. No one said a word about the folder. No one asked what came next. They just acted like it hadn't happened. Like if they stayed silent long enough, the truth would roll itself back into the shadows. I sat down, poured my own coffee, looked each of them in the eye. And then I said it, flat and even. You all ignored a crime because it was inconvenient to address it. Forks paused. Dorian chuckled nervously, but no one challenged me, not directly. They just let it land and die in the air, untouched. It wasn't shock, it was strategy. Pretend, stall, forget. I couldn't breathe in that kitchen, so I stepped outside. The backyard had always been my space growing up. I used to sit on the porch steps and watch the clouds, pretending they could carry me somewhere else. Now, I just needed them to help me stay calm. Dorian followed, holding his mug like a peace offering, but his words came sharp. You're really gonna tear the family apart over a technicality? I looked at him. You think stealing a car and almost killing your own sister is a technicality? He smirked. You weren't even seriously hurt. You're walking, aren't you? That's your measure for damage, whether I'm in a wheelchair? He raised his hands in mock surrender. Come on, what do you want, huh? You want me to get arrested? Say sorry on camera? I stepped closer. I want you to stop pretending like nothing happened. I want you to admit it. Even just to yourself, because I remember, and I'm not forgetting. For the first time, his smirk faltered. I don't need the police to know the truth, I added. I just need you to remember I know it too. He didn't reply. He just stood there. No punchlines, no distractions. Just the look of a man realizing the game had changed and I wasn't playing by the old rules anymore. I went back inside without saying another word. That afternoon, I packed slowly, deliberately, pulling important documents from drawers, stashing them in a lockbox, scanning copies and uploading backups to encrypted storage. I wasn't leaving yet. but I was building an exit that didn't rely on their permission. Later, I texted Rachel. Just one line. You might want to ask him who really owned the car. No context, no follow-up. Let her stew. And for the first time in weeks, I did something for myself. I booked a therapy session. Someone who specialized in trauma inside the home. I didn't need to fix them. I needed to stop bleeding for their comfort. They didn't get to decide what my healing looked like. They didn't get to shame me into silence anymore, because this wasn't a meltdown. This was a boundary. The war wasn't loud anymore. But make no mistake, it had begun. Sunday slipped in quietly. I stayed in my room all day, not sulking, not hiding, just listening, watching, letting them think I was retreating when really I was calculating. No one knocked. No text. No, "Are you okay?" It told me everything. They assumed silence meant surrender, that ignoring me would tame whatever fight they thought I had left. From my spot by the window, I heard Rachel's laugh downstairs. Sharp, forced, too loud for a casual visit. She was back. Of course she was. Like a vulture returning to the scene of the meal, circling whatever scraps were left. I cracked my door, just enough to hear. Dorian's voice was low, but not careful. If we file the paperwork Monday, she can't say we didn't warn her. Paperwork. Something in my gut twisted. They were planning something. I opened the voice recorder app and let it run quietly on the nightstand, angled toward the hall. Every breath, every word. I wanted it all saved. I wasn't waiting for the next lie to blindside me. I'd meet it head-on, with proof. Sometime after 4, I heard light footsteps approach my room. Then the knock. Soft. Too polite. Rachel stepped in without waiting. She smiled that tight, performative grin. Just wanted to check in. We haven't really talked, you and me. I didn't answer. I just watched her cross the room, eyes flicking over my desk, the shelves, the unopened suitcase in the corner. She sat on the edge of the bed like we were old friends catching up. Dorian told me you've got a lot going on, and, this house is big, but not that big. We've all been feeling the tension. I kept my arms crossed, waited. Then she dropped it. Are you still using the car? I mean, it's totally fine if you are. I just wasn't sure who was paying the insurance, that's all. There it was. I said nothing for a beat, then smiled back. You're not here for conversation. You're here for intel. She blinked, caught off guard. You want to know if I'm planning to protect myself, or if you've still got time to twist the narrative? Her face shifted. No, I swear, I cut her off. Rachel, is this about protecting Dorian? Or keeping me from protecting myself? She looked like she wanted to answer, but all she said was, we just want peace. I stood. You don't get to define peace when you're the one who shattered it. She left with a stiff nod, but her composure was thinner than her excuses. As soon as the door closed, I wrote down everything. Every word, every glance, every fake smile. The kind of record you keep when you've seen people lie with their whole faces. That night, I locked the bedroom door. I changed every password, email, banking, socials. I added two-factor authentication, even on apps I barely used. I uploaded my journal, audio files, the police report, and every screenshot to cloud storage. I encrypted a backup and hid the USB behind a loose plank in the closet. Then I reached out to someone I never thought I'd need, a lawyer from a trauma survivor group I'd joined quietly a year ago. Just an inquiry, just information. But it was mine. I wasn't trying to start a war. But I sure as hell wasn't letting one catch me unarmed. It was after 3 a.m. when my phone buzzed. A text. No name, no number, just 5 words. You're pushing too far. Stop. I stared at the screen, read it again. Then I locked the phone, rolled over, and whispered to myself, not scared, not rattled, but clear. That's when I knew this wasn't just family drama. It was war by other means. Tuesday afternoon, I stood at the edge of the living room, not waiting for permission, not asking for understanding. I'd sent a message earlier that morning. Short, clear. Be home at 3. We need to talk. They showed up. Dorian slouched in the recliner like he owned it. Rachel perched on the couch arm, pretending poise. My mother, already seated, folding and refolding the hem of her shirt. I didn't raise my voice. That would have given them something to dismiss. I spoke slowly, deliberately. I've been recording, writing, gathering everything, not because I wanted a fight, but because I knew one was coming. I placed a sealed envelope on the coffee table, neat, unopened. Inside, the police report, medical records from the ER, voice recordings, journal excerpts, all copied, all backed up. This isn't a threat, I said. It's documentation, for my protection. Dorian gave that half scoff he does when he's rattled but won't admit it. You're really going through with this? I turned toward him. Already did. My attorney has a full file. His smirk wavered. Rachel leaned forward. So now you're vindictive. That's the role? I met her eyes. No, I'm visible. Finally. I let that sit. I didn't owe them rage. I didn't owe them pain. What I owed myself was the truth. Spoken, not swallowed. I kept hoping things would fix themselves. If I stayed quiet long enough, maybe someone else would speak up. But I nearly died trying to wait for decency. I pulled a piece of paper from my pocket, unfolded it slowly. This was written the night of the accident, I said, when you were at dinner. I read, he left me bleeding to make his dinner reservation. I was still on the pavement when he posted pictures of cocktails. My ribs cracked. So did something else inside me. My belief that this family would protect me. The room was still. My mother's hands stopped moving. Her eyes welled, but she didn't say a word. And that silence, it was louder than yelling, heavier than denial. She wasn't shocked. She just didn't want it spoken aloud. I folded the paper, slid it back into my jacket. I'm not asking for anything, I said. I'm not negotiating. I'm not apologizing. I'm just telling the truth. Finally. Then I stood. Nobody stopped me. I walked out. Not to storm off, not for dramatic effect. It was for me. For closure. Outside, I didn't look back. I got into the car and headed across town. My foot steady on the gas, hands sure on the wheel. The city passed by in a blur, but I wasn't zoning out. I was focused, locked in. I pulled into the parking lot of the law office. Brick building. Small sign. No drama, just business. Inside, I handed the manila folder to the receptionist. For Mr. Delaney, he's expecting this. 10 minutes later, I was sitting across from a lawyer who'd read more betrayal than most therapists. We went through everything. Dates, photos, records, text messages. He didn't blink once. He just asked, "What do you want out of this?" I answered without hesitation. I want protection. I want clarity. And I want them to know I'm not staying quiet anymore. He nodded. We'll start with filing for legal notice of property ownership and disputed liability. You'll be covered. I gave him the encrypted USB. This isn't revenge, I said. It's reclaiming space they tried to erase me from. When I walked out of that office, the air felt different. Not cleaner, just honest. For the first time in months, I wasn't breathing in fear. I was breathing in freedom. As I sat back in the car, one line circled my thoughts, something I read years ago but never understood until now. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And yet, what came the next day? I never saw that version of him before. It was supposed to be a quick trip. Eggs, coffee, detergent. I wasn't even 10 steps from my car in the grocery store parking lot when I saw him. Dorian, leaning against his car, laughing with a man in a crisp suit who looked like he hadn't slept in days. I considered walking past, pretending not to notice. But something about the way Dorian saw me, a flicker of recognition followed too fast by tension, pulled me in. I walked toward them. Dorian straightened, crossing his arms like I'd just ruined his afternoon. Funny running into you, I said. Calm, even. He didn't answer with a smile. Instead, his voice shot up, too loud for comfort. You really gonna keep dragging this family through the mud? The man in the suit stiffened. I didn't flinch. And you really gonna keep pretending you didn't leave me for dead in the middle of the street? He blinked, once, then turned to the suited man. This is who I was telling you about. My sister. She's the one trying to tear everything down. The man raised both hands in that diplomatic way people do when they're trying not to get hit by the crossfire. I was hired, he said cautiously, as a neutral party, just here to facilitate understanding. I looked at Dorian. You brought a mediator to a grocery store parking lot? He shrugged. I figured since you're being so unpredictable. No, I said. What you mean is, I stopped being quiet. That's not unpredictable. That's overdue. Dorian's jaw clenched, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of reacting further. I turned around and walked straight back to my car. The groceries could wait. Back at the house, I kicked off my shoes and paused at the edge of the living room. Something was off. I couldn't put my finger on it right away, but then I saw it. The throw blanket on the couch folded differently. My charger unplugged, a small mug out of place. My laptop sat half open on the dining table. I never leave it like that. I opened it, checked the login history. Someone had tried to get in just after 2 p.m., same time I was at the store. I rushed to the drawer in my bedroom where I'd hidden the backup USBs. The envelope that held 3 now only held 2. That feeling, like the floor shifts under your feet, settled in my chest. This wasn't family tension anymore. This was breach, violation, strategy. I pulled out my secondary drive, encrypted the backups again, installed new software, changed every password, 2-factor authentication on everything. Not paranoia, just defense. I stared at the door for a moment, then turned and secured it. Every window locked, every file double-checked. I even added a small pin camera facing the hallway, just in case. By evening, there was a knock at the front door. Dorian. No warning, no call. He just showed up. Mom wasn't home. Rachel wasn't with him. It was just him and me. I think it's time we talk like real siblings, he said. I didn't invite him in, but he walked past me anyway and sat at the kitchen table. I followed, set my phone on the table, hit record, didn't hide it. He noticed, smirked. You recording now? What, am I on trial? No, you're just not trusted. That was the spark. He exploded. You're vindictive. You're obsessed. You've always needed someone to blame for your own emptiness. Each word louder than the last. He slammed his hand on the table, water glass toppling, his face red with frustration. I didn't move. I didn't respond. I just looked at him. And in that silence, he crumbled. Because for the first time, I wasn't reacting. I wasn't begging. I wasn't retreating. I was observing. I let the silence stretch so long it made him uncomfortable. Then I said simply, the only reason you're angry is because I refuse to disappear. He stood, shook his head like he was shaking off a nightmare. But he was wide awake now, because I wasn't who I used to be. That was the first time I wasn't afraid of him, and the last time he ever raised his voice to me. 2 weeks after Dorian's outburst, I sat in the familiar chair across from my therapist for what we both knew would be my last session. Not because I had it all figured out, but because I no longer needed a witness to every wound. She said, "You didn't need to become perfect to deserve peace." That line, it stayed with me. I told her I wasn't here to fix anyone anymore. Not him, not Rachel, not even Mom. I'd wasted too much time trying to be digestible, less loud, less angry, less inconvenient. She smiled and said, "Then it's time to live." That night, I wrote myself a letter. Not to mail, not to post, just to read when I forgot who I was becoming. It said, "You're allowed to exist, even if it makes people uncomfortable." I folded it, placed it in the back of my drawer, behind a photo of me from college, before all of this. When I left the office, the sun was mid-afternoon warm. There was a quiet in me I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness, but lightness. Like my lungs remembered how to hold air without panic. 2 days later, Mom came by. She didn't call first, just knocked, holding a plate of banana bread, warm, like she used to make when I was sick. We didn't say much, just tea. Silence. Then she said, I didn't see it, not because I was blind, I just couldn't look. She looked older saying that, smaller. I nodded. I know. And I did forgive her. Not because she said the words, but because I couldn't carry that poison anymore. It had stained too much already. Dorian never apologized. That's not a surprise. I stopped waiting. Instead, I started clearing journals, clothes, boxes of someday. I donated them to the shelter near the community center. It felt symbolic, but also just necessary. Rachel's final message came as an email. You were always dramatic. I didn't reply. I didn't even feel the urge. A week later, I stood at the podium in the support group room, the one I'd sat silently in months before. At first, I introduced myself without a name, just, I've been through some things, but as I spoke, something shifted. I felt myself in my own voice again, so I said it. My name is Claire, and I stayed far too long in silence, but I'm not quiet anymore. One woman sobbed, another squeezed my hand after. I didn't speak for applause, I spoke because I could. Driving home, windows down, no music, just the wind threading through my fingers. I realized something simple and solid. I didn't just survive my brother's choices, I outgrew them.